Okay, so my presentation is about the people of Sicily. Sicily is a small island to the south of Italy. It's kind of the same, but the Sicilian people identify themselves as their own little group. And basically, we're just going to look at their self-concept and some ways that our perspectives about the Sicilian people affect how they feel, and kind of some ways maybe we can change that to build better communication with them. So this is their national flag. And then all of these little pictures are there for a reason, because these movies like The Godfather and The Sopranos are based off of the Sicilian mafia. So kind of the origins of the mafia in America started on the island of Sicily. Oh, and I guess the reason why this is important to me is that's where my family's from. So it hits home a little bit. So a lot of mafia roots were grown here. And basically what happens is, because all of these movies have kind of romanticized the idea of an Italian mafia, the actual people of Sicily now feel that that's their identity. So mass media has portrayed Sicily as, doing illegal activities, killing people, selling alcohol during the prohibition, whatever. But there's a lot of good, hardworking people still in Sicily that aren't associated with that. And as we know, our self-concept is formed from how other people see us and so on. So the concepts specifically that we'll be looking at is the looking glass theory, self-concept as a whole, and then how cultural influences kind of affect all of that. So just a brief summary, I know you guys already know, but the looking glass theory is basically how we see ourselves reflected in other people. So, I view this as kind of like a social anxiety, being like, oh, are people looking at my ripped shirt, or are people looking at my shoes, or whatever. So that's kind of the looking glass theory. As a Sicilian citizen, you may be thinking that, oh, all of these people in America think that I'm associated with the mafia just because I have dark features or a gold chain or whatever. And then your self-concept is built up of all of those things. So from the looking glass theory, but also it can change depending on the context. So a Sicilian citizen in Sicily may feel right at home because they know that, okay, I have this community, I'm a hard worker, I'm not in the mafia. But if they come over here, that context changes and they say, okay, now I'm surrounded by people I don't know. So we'll talk about how that affects your self-concept. And all those can be summed up in cultural influences. So how we feel depending on the context.
Aaron, get off your phone, please.
So first concept is the looking glass theory. So as you can see here, our little lady is surrounded by 4 other people, and these 4 other people all have their own view of who this lady is. And little lady doesn't know, maybe doesn't have her self-concept fully formed, so she's taking all these tidbits and it's building into her own self-concept. So as this relates to the Sicilian people, we have to keep this in mind because everybody is sensitive to other people's perceptions, and if you view somebody as associated with something as negative as the mafia, that can play a role and can build into their self-concept, and that can be a negative thing, right? We want to give everybody a fair shake. And like we said before, your self-concept is basically how you view yourself. This can be intrinsic, so basically, you build yourself up to feel a certain way. If you study a lot, you're going to feel better about your knowledge levels. If you work out a lot, you'll feel better about how physically capable you are. But there's also extrinsic things that can affect your self-concept too. So like you said, this is the looking glass theory. How other people talk about you or view you can affect that. And I guess the goal is, one, to have a good self-concept for yourself, but also to not bring down other people's self-concept. So even if I didn't like Hunter's shoes, I wouldn't go up to him and say, Hunter, I don't like your shoes, because then you would feel bad about it, and it may, you may doubt your own ability to choose your clothes, right? So as it relates to Sicily, we have to be sensitive about everybody's self-concept. So, just because they look a certain way or from a certain region, it's good to be fair and, like I said, give them a fair shake so that we don't hurt their self-concepts. All right, the last IPC term is cultural influences. So I guess this is kind of a summary for all of these things, right? Depending on who you are, where you're from, what your family does, or what you do, can all be summarized into a culture. And our cultures have influences on who we are, via our self-concept or the actions that we choose to do. So yeah, just being aware of that and how, in Sicily, they wouldn't show movies about the mafia because it's looked at as a negative thing and it's associated with bad people, probably families have been hurt and drugs and alcohol have been in their country because of it. But over here, it's the opposite. It's like, oh, that's cool. Some people might aspire to be that type of person. So we've got to realize that, depending on your different culture, there's going to be different influences, but just to be respectful of everybody in that way. So recap, Sicilian people talked about 3 separate IPC terms from your self-concept, looking glass theory, and cultural influences, but they all kind of build into one, and it's all kind of one and the same. It's basically about respecting other people's right to have their own self-concept. So not judging somebody because of a few bad apples, but giving them the opportunity to be their own person. And realizing that, for example, the looking glass theory can affect how other people feel. And so the parting thought is just to remember the golden rule and to treat others the way you want to be treated. That's it. Any questions?
Good job.
Gracias.